Hello everyone, Pastor Chad here, and I'm coming to you from my office here in Edmonton. And today I want to talk to you about vaccines and the ideas or thoughts you should ask, or the questions that you should ask yourself regarding whether or not you should take a vaccine, especially in relation to the COVID vaccine. I get asked sometimes, what are my thoughts? What are my concerns? Will I be taking the vaccine? And so I just want to kind of outline 5 questions, really, or 5 thoughts that you should use in determining whether or not you should take this COVID vaccine or not. Now, basically, I'm not going to tell you whether you should or not. You will find through this talk that I am much. I'm not very probably. I wouldn't be very supportive of this in one sense. But let me just say this: I am not an anti-vaxxer in that sense. But I do believe that there are some criteria that we should judge what we put into our bodies and so forth. I do believe that no vaccine should be made mandatory, because I believe that people should have the right to choose or to not choose the vaccine. And so I hope that as we go through this today, you can make a decision for yourself upon the best knowledge and understanding that you have. And I would encourage you to even look up and confirm, or to investigate, the various things that we talk about today. And probably one of the most important things to do is to look to the Holy Spirit for direction in this decision. And I believe that the Holy Spirit will lead and guide you to the correct decision for you in relation to vaccines, and especially the COVID-19 vaccine. So I want to start out, and let's just kind of jump in. 5 thoughts or 5 questions related to vaccines. And the first one would relate to just kind of who we are as Christians and who we are as people, and why, in a sense, I would question or not the need for a vaccine is this: God built our bodies to ward off sickness and disease. And He has designed it that way. He has caused our bodies to function in that manner, that as we get sick, it creates its own ability, or it kicks into place abilities within the body to ward off sickness and disease. We also know that God is our healer. Exodus 15:26 says, Jehovah Rapha, the Lord our healer, or the Lord who heals. And as Christians, our first dependence should be upon God for the health and strength of our bodies. But let me just say this also: God has provided natural foods and minerals and vitamins so that our body functions properly. Genesis 1:29 says this: Then God said, See, I've given you every plant yielding seed which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree which has fruit yielding seed, and it shall be food for you. And so God has given us foods that in those foods are vitamins, minerals, things that help sustain and strengthen our body. So, I believe in taking care of our bodies. I believe in taking certain supplements, because in some of the foods that we eat, we do not get the supplements that we need. So, or because of where we live, for example, here in Canada, especially during the winter, we don't get as much vitamin D as we should. So I believe, there's good things in taking certain supplements and just taking care of our bodies. There's wisdom in taking care of our bodies, eating properly, getting rest, getting proper exercise, and so forth. And also, let's be frank, God gives us common sense, and if we're not feeling well, we don't go to work, we don't hang around others, and we get proper rest and do all the things that we're doing. But first thing that I think of is that God has given our bodies the ability to ward off sickness and disease, and so that's where our dependence should lie for our health and strength. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is regarding, is the vaccine safe? Okay, now I realize that with all medical procedures, with all medical procedures, things that we put into our bodies and so forth, there's always a risk. But I look at the risk of one, risk and reward, but also how was this vaccine rolled out. Now, one of the things that concerns me about the COVID vaccine is that it was rolled out in 10 months, the fastest ever. Um, just in relation to that, SARS, which is a virus related to COVID, came out where we had the first big SARS outbreaks in 2003, 2004, and they're still trying to develop a vaccine for SARS. So how can they roll out a vaccine in 10 months when for another infection that is related to COVID, it's been, 17 years. Now, I'm not the expert. I don't have all the answers. There's probably things related to each one that I don't know about and don't have the expertise or medical knowledge to understand. But it does cause me to think, how can a vaccine come out so quickly? I also understand the technology used in the COVID vaccine has not been used on a mass scale on humans before. And so that also leads me to some concerns. What are the long-term implications of this vaccine on people? Side effects and so forth. For example, I know that in the Pfizer vaccine, and you can look this up, there's polyethylene glycol, PEG, and it's an ingredient that has been used, and it's never been used before in an approved vaccine. And for some people, they have mild allergic reactions, and in some people, it's very severe allergic reactions to PEG. And little testing was done regarding this. And so, I have questions about the safety of the vaccine. I do. I have questions about whether it's safe or not, and what is the long-term lasting consequences or side effects that could come from this vaccine. So, is it safe? Another question, and number 3 would be, is it effective? Now, I understand the Pfizer vaccine they're saying is 95% effective. I believe the Moderna vaccine is somewhat similar, making claims. We just recently saw that Merck, one of the other pharmaceutical companies, has abandoned its vaccine, studies and they're no longer trying to create a vaccine because they couldn't match the Pfizer vaccine, they said, and they could also not match the effectiveness of the antibodies or the immunity built up in a person if they should get COVID itself. But I do have a question about effectiveness, and I think they even have a question about effectiveness because they're still telling us, and you hear it in the news, they're still telling us that if we get a vaccine, we still have to wear masks. We still have to socially distance. We still could get somebody else sick. In other words, we could still transmit COVID to somebody else, even though we're technically immune. And they're saying that we could still even get sick, probably less severe, but that we could still get sick with COVID, even though we've been vaccinated for it. So I look at all of those things, and recently I just read, actually today, that even if you get vaccinated, you still have to abide by the travel restrictions that are on other people. So I look at it today and I think, in a sense, if I have a question about the safety, if the effectiveness of it is in question, and I still have to go through all the social protocols, I still have to distance from everybody, I still have to wear a mask and so forth. In some sense, I ask myself, what's the point? I mean, part of the whole reason they say take a vaccine is protect others. Keep others safe by taking the vaccine. And it's like, well, if I can still transmit it to people, even after I've taken the vaccination, what's the point of taking the vaccination? Which kind of leads me to the fourth one. Is it necessary? Now, this is going to be maybe different for different people. Looking at my own situation, I'm almost 50. I'll be 50 in the next 17 days. Looking up the statistics, and this is from the Health Canada website, looking at the statistics, as a 50-year-old man, I have a 99.91% chance of recovery should I get COVID. So basically, I have a 0.09% chance of dying. And by the way, that's probably even less because of the comorbidities involved. I don't have any sort of heart disease or anything like that. I'm in good health. I'm strong, and so forth. So my chances of succumbing and dying because of this virus is basically zero. Because if you use rounding up or rounding down, it's basically zero. If I look across Canada, they say what, 3, maybe 4 people have died at the of COVID who have been under the age of 20, and we don't know the comorbidities involved in those situations. So I look at it and say, is it necessary for me? Uh, as far as I'm told, that if I was to get COVID, I would have flu-like or some symptoms for a couple of days, and it would be like me getting a regular. I'm not saying COVID is a regular flu, but for me, my body would respond to it like, in a sense, a regular flu. I wouldn't get very sick. In some instances, I might not even really know that I have it outside of a sniffles or a cold. So, is it necessary for me to take it? Would I go through all of this in order, well, because like I say, is it necessary? Is it going to save my life? It doesn't look that way. Now, of course, it's related to age and it's related to comorbidities. The older someone is, the more comorbidities in someone's in their body and so forth, the physical things that they're dealing with. You have to ask and look at that and say, okay, maybe I need to consider this. Maybe it is necessary for me, or maybe not. It's all up to us as individuals, and I look at the new strains and so forth they're talking about. They say that they're more easily transmissible, fine, but they say the severity of the reactions, or the severity of the sickness, is just the same as COVID. So I'm not worried about any sort of new variants or anything like that. So I look at this and I say, is it necessary for me? Is it going to save my life? Do I need to go through something where I risk possibly the safety of it? Do I need to go through and get a medical procedure if it's not going to be effective and it doesn't protect me or from the virus, or it doesn't protect me from spreading the virus? And if I don't really have, if the chance of me dying is zero, basically, then why take this vaccination? Just come up some of my thoughts. All right. Let me get to one last one, fifth one, which some people are talking about, and I understand the concern for that. The moral question, and abortion specifically, and do COVID-19 vaccines contain aborted fetal cells? Now, from my studies and my looking it up, it would seem that the Pfizer, at least from what I've read, Pfizer and Moderna state that they do not contain any aborted fetal cells. In other words, they're saying that if you were to be injected with this vaccine, you would not be injected, or no cell lines or aborted fetal cells were used in the manufacturing of the vaccine, and so you would not receive any of these cells should you take the vaccination. They also say that fetal cell lines are not used during the development or production phases of the vaccines. From what I understand, they go through different stages, like they go through a development stage, they go through a production stage, and then they kind of go through a confirmation stage where they test the vaccines. So according to Pfizer and Moderna, fetal cell lines were not used during the development or production phases of their vaccines. Now, what are fetal cell lines? They're not the same as fetal tissue. Fetal cell lines are cells that have been grown in a laboratory, and they are descendants of cells taken from elective abortions from the 1970s. So Pfizer and Moderna are saying that they've never used fetal cell lines in the production or the development. They're saying that there's no fetal cell lines, no fetal tissue in the vaccine itself. But they are saying that our fetal cell lines were used to perform confirmation tests. In other words, they were used to confirm the vaccine's work. and specifically, I believe in the Pfizer vaccine, the fetal cell line of HEK 293, which was basically cell lines that were come from a 1973 elective abortion in the Netherlands. They used this cell line to confirm the vaccines work, or the vaccinations work. So, those are kind of the five questions that are the five thoughts that I have. One, the first thing is God has given our bodies the ability to take care of itself, to heal ourselves. And yes, obviously, there are situations where our body gets beyond those abilities, and we need, we'll need medical treatment, or, we believe God for healing. Secondly, is it safe? And that's something that you would have to determine for yourself. Is it safe? Is it something that you're willing to take the risk for? It appears, we've had a few, in consideration of the number of vaccines that have been out there, we have had a few people, have side effects, but it doesn't seem like there's that many now. We don't know the long-term side effects. Number three, is it effective? That's still, we have to wait and see. Number four, is it necessary? In my case, I do not feel it's necessary. I don't think it's going to add to my life in any way, or it's going to help my life, or it's going to even help me protect others. Okay? And number five is a moral question that you would have to look at and address yourself. But according to the manufacturers, Pfizer, especially Moderna, which are the two right now out in Canada, those fetal cell lines were used in the manufacturing process, only in the confirmation process, and therefore you would not be injected with fetal cell lines or fetal cells in any shape or manner. One other question that people have is, are these vaccines the mark of the beast, or are they related to the mark of the beast? I'm going to answer that in the next video, because it is kind of lengthy, and I want to kind of go through that more detail. So come and watch the next video, and we'll see you very shortly. All right, take care. Bye-bye.